We're going to start in a few minutes. I'm just making sure the stream is good. But you can take your seats along. Any month of any year, except next month. It will be a week before or a week after because there's a national camp and we can't have the first Wednesday because that's the time of the national camp. But what's the space? It's going to be a bring and braai with a theme. So watch out for that. Without any further ado, I'm going to ask Jenny Patterson to introduce our guest speaker. Please come along, Jenny.
Hello everybody, nice to see you all, and familiar faces, unfamiliar faces as well. It's not going to be long, but I'll have to use my quick notes. I just want to tell you a little bit about Warren, who he is, entrepreneur, pilots and aerobics competitor. He got his pilot's license before he got his driver's license at the age of 16. So it doesn't kind of make sense, does it? Trail runner, mountain biker, triathlete, Springbok scout, Springbok duathlon athlete, Comrades marathon finisher, Ironman finisher, rock climbing, microlight pilot, and skydiver. What's left off, Warren? Anyway, from a very early age, Warren's had love for mountains, and he always wanted to get to the top of whatever point he was. And it was through scouting that got him into rock climbing at the age of 16, which developed a keen interest in mountaineering. He climbed his first mountain, Kilimanjaro, in 2000. He's been back and done a second summit of that, but since then he hasn't looked back. Some of his really notable achievements were the latest one, Annapurna, which was his first South African ascent, and Warren, we're very proud of you. Another first South African ascent was K2 in Pakistan in 2022. And for that, Warren and his climbing partner John received the prestigious South African Order of Ikhamanga, which is awarded to South African citizens who have excelled in the fields of different fields of arts, culture, literature, music, journalism, and sport. Also in 2023, Warren and John were awarded the Mountain Club's Mountain Award for this first ascent of K2, first South African ascent. Again, very proud of you. Amadablam in Nepal, first South African ascent, team ascent. Then he's been to Mount Kenya, Kilimanjaro, as I said, twice, Denali, Himalaya, summited various peaks in the Himalaya, Oorbietjie Island Peak, Mount Elbrus, Cordillera Blanca, and several other peaks in Peru. So without further ado, I'm not going to say any more. I'm sure you people will have some questions to ask him afterwards. He can answer if he wants to. But in the meantime, before I hand over to him, please switch your cell phones onto silent mode. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm not really sure how to live up to that. I don't actually believe half of what Jenny just said. But and my mom didn't know about half of it. She does now. She's streaming. But lovely to be here, and thanks so much for having me. I mean, we get to talk about something we all love, and that's the mountains. And I love reminiscing over these trips that we do. And look forward to just taking you on this journey tonight. A little bit of a view through what it looks like from our side to climb up into the death zone, up into the 8,000 meter peaks, and hopefully give you a glimpse of what we've seen and what it takes to get up there. As Jenny said, I've got more hobbies than time, and besides working and a beautiful family, I also fly aerobatics. I'm an aerobatic instructor, so I get to do quite a bit of the backseat stuff, which I think is probably my most extreme sport, trying to teach a guy up front who's never done it before, who thinks he knows how. But we fly competition aerobatics around the country. I then met my partner, Joanna, skydiving. She was an instructor, I was a student. It sounds like the cliche, but she wasn't my instructor. I wanted her to be, but she wasn't. But she loved the skydiving so much that we ended up spending a lot of time at the drop zones, and I ended up enjoying flying the aeroplane more. So I fly the plane and I get to kick Joanna out of it. It's every relationship's dream, really. And this is a little bit of view of what it looks like when we're up there, soaring above the clouds, throwing them out. In fact, that's Joanna in that jump. And then I get to race them down, and generally I win. But amongst that, we enjoy just the outdoors of South Africa. We're so privileged to have the space, the time, and everything available to us that we get to do out here in this country. And I think we try to embrace it as much as possible. I grew up with an outdoor culture, and very grateful for that. And hopefully, I'm living that culture to the amount that it deserves. I want to introduce you to John. John and I, as Jenny said, we climbed K2 in 2022. This is at Camp 4 on the way down from the summit. But that was a 25-year or 30-year friendship and 25 years of mountaineering together to get to that point. It was a journey that we shared over all those years, training, preparing. If we weren't on a mountain, we were talking about going to a mountain or training for a mountain. In fact, it's pretty much all we talk about. And it's been a really special relationship, as well as with Robbie Kuyetin, who many of you will know, Alan, late Alan, who has now since passed, who also on K2 with us. And it's been a special friendship in that it's very seldom you see the same guys who are able to climb together, especially for that many years. And I think that's also made us stronger climbers. But John, an incredible athlete, unfortunately lives in the UK now, so we don't get to train as much as we used to, but we'll continue to climb together. And in 2022, we managed to climb K2, which was our 20-year dream. We'd started as 16-year-old rock climbers who, if I knew then what I know now, would never have climbed, because we must have been dangerous. We were just a hazard. But we managed to hack it. We got through. We fell in love with it. We still rock climb. And this all culminated in this 20-year journey, which led us to get that Order of Ikhamanga, which is the highest award that a citizen of South Africa can get. And it was awarded to us for our contribution to endurance sport. A great honor and a very special award. It sits in display in my house, right next to my MCSA award, which I hold just as dear. But this 20-year journey, we'd always talked about K2. We'd actually never really seen anything beyond it. And this is the conversation we had in Camp 4.
So, John and I just summited K2. And I think the obvious question is, what's next?
And it was a genuine problem. We hadn't ever thought about it. Well, I don't think we ever thought that we were going to pull that off. So we, on our way down, decided, well, in fact, we started talking about it right then and there, I think. And this plan to continue in the 8,000ers for a couple more challenges started to manifest itself. The question is, what was next? And as you all know, there's 14 8,000 meter peaks. All of these are in that death zone that we call it. Above 8,000 meters, essentially life is not sustainable. So you're there as a guest, you're there on borrowed time. And out of these 14, we were looking for a mountain that we could attempt without oxygen. That we decided was our next challenge. Whether it's possible or not, I'm yet to find out. Possible for me, at least, or not, we're yet to find out. But somehow, and I'm not entirely sure how, John and I, thinking to make an 8,000er even harder by trying it without oxygen, decided to try it on Annapurna. Clearly, we didn't do all of our homework quite as well as we thought we had, but ended up on the world's most dangerous mountain, and decided that that was the best option for this expedition that we wanted. I think it was more the lure of Annapurna. It was the first of the 8,000ers, the first one that was climbed, 1950, by Maurice Herzog and Louis Lachanel, French climbers. It wasn't climbed again until 1970. Obviously, there was a lot of focus also on Everest at that point. It's also, at this point, the least climbed 8,000er. I now know why. But the lure of this mountain, it was first climbed, it had this dramatic expedition that the French pulled off to summit it, and they paid an ultimate price, well, a great price. They lost a lot of fingers and toes and digits on the way down, but it had this lure, and it always has. When we left for the mountain, the death rate or success rate was, for every 3 summits, there was one person would die trying. So a scary statistic, which perhaps is part of the lure, but it was a whole package. It was the fact that the top end of the mountain was a little bit easier for us at the point where we had no oxygen. It was the fact that it was Annapurna. Who thinks to climb the mountain with probably the greatest name of the 8,000ers outside of Everest and K2? So it was just the whole package that attracted us. Annapurna sits in a range of mountains. It's basically a ridge of mountains, everything sort of above 7,000 meters and up to just over 8,000. The Annapurna one being the highest. And a beautiful, absolutely spectacular area to be in and climbing. And it's not always about the snow-capped mountains. The valleys in the bottom of the picture are something to behold. For those who have trekked in the Himalayas, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I hope that those who haven't are still going to. So this is what our route was going to look like. Or what our route did look like. And this is obviously above base camp, and we'll get to a bit more detail of the route now. But you can see the mountain's got very little weaknesses, or very few weaknesses. In fact, only the one. And it's not really a weakness, it's just a way through a dangerous route. But the plan was to have 4 camps, and then from camp 4 to go for the summit, with multiple rotations for acclimatization. But before we get that high on the mountain, these trips always start with obviously all the conversations we've had, the dreaming, the planning. The planning goes further than just what day do we leave and air tickets and what are we going to pack and where we going to be on certain days and training. And it's also family, it's friends, it's work. John and I both run businesses. We've got to prep that. So it's 6 months of preparation to get ourselves ready for these long expeditions. We were planning to be on this for about 3 months, just shy of 3 months for the expedition. So it's a long time to be away. And these expeditions always start with too much baggage. And if you've been on a big mountain expedition, you realize it's actually one of the most challenging parts. If you can imagine putting that in and out of a taxi, into a lift, up an escalator, into a hotel room, back out of a hotel room, you're exhausted before you even get to the start. And always a challenge. I wish they'd make gear bags with wheels on. But what these expeditions do beyond that is they take us to these amazing places. Places that you otherwise probably wouldn't normally go. It's not the one that stands out on the map, or it's not the highest spoken about or the most spoken about tourist route. But these expeditions take us to areas with wonderful cultures, great food, and of course there's always a backdrop of a mountain down the street that you're walking as you're approaching the mountains. This is in the town called Pokhara. So if ever you're going to go do the Annapurna circuit, you're most likely going to find yourself in Pokhara. Of course, you're going to come through Kathmandu, which in itself is really fun. We've been a number of times on our various climbs. Love Kathmandu, but 2 days is about all that I can take. And then I need to quieten it down a little bit. But Pokhara was lovely. And if you are ever passing through there, spend a few days. Good food, nice places to walk around. There's a big lake. And, of course, the backdrop. As I was saying, I've always been lucky to have people to climb with. And Jana's been on the second 8,000 meter expedition that she's been on with me. We've went to K2 together, and now she came to base camp with us again on Annapurna. So I take my own hot water bottle. Sorry for the other guys. The guy on the right of the screen is Dean Houghton, also a scout. So John and I met through scouting, and Dean as well. Champion of a guy. He's also a pilot, airlink captain, also flies aerobatics. We have a bit in common. But he came with us up to base camp and walked out with Jana, accompanied her out. Was one of those great guys you just want to spend more time with. And of course, John, the great mountaineer of South Africa. But one of them. These walks into the base camps are often the part that we don't think about. We think, oh, there was a flag on a summit. But let me tell you that these hikes in these valleys, getting up to the base camps, are just as exciting or just as enjoyable as being down in the town and experiencing those different cultures. We're now seeing these beautiful views. The water is exactly that color. It's this glacial melt water, and you just walk up these rivers, and it's really the opportunity, I suppose, to leave that busyness behind you and start settling into the mountain life. And these trips up the valleys are, for me, one of my favorite parts of the expeditions. And Annapurna was no different. Green, lots of trees. We were there in the autumn, so it was the end of their summer. So, we were there in spring, at the beginning of the summer. So everything was starting to get green, and really just stunning place to be. And every corner you come around, there's a new peak and a new mountain. And of course, then we arrived in base camp. Now, normally these base camps for us have always been either we try and alpine style climb as much as we possibly can. The 8,000ers just don't lend themselves to that for various reasons. But the base camps are generally on a glacier. The glacier is melting, and every few days you've got to repitch your tent, and you're walking on glacier from here to where you're going to eat, and it's a bit cumbersome. Annapurna wasn't that. We had a solid floor of a base camp. We had box tents, and it was as comfortable as it looks, to be honest. It was wonderful. And here's John gave us a quick tour of his tent.
Morning. A couple of people have been asked about what it's like around camp, so I thought I'd give you a bit of a tour around our tent. We're very fortunate in base camp on this trip to have these very luxurious box tents. Lots of space, you can stand up inside. First expedition I've been on, we've had such comfortable tents. They're really cool to be in, but they are quite cold because they're so big. But I'll just take you for a quick walk through. Doing a bit of solar charging over here to keep all of our devices charged. At the moment I'm charging my Sunta watch, just making sure everything's fully charged for the trip higher up the mountain. We've got a really cool space at the front of our tent here. I've packed my gear high up the mountain, so most of our climbing gear, helmets, ice axes, backpacks, all that sort of stuff we'll use higher up the mountain. And coming into the tent, as I said, lots of space. Got a mattress, my sleeping bag, and all my clothing packed along the back. My gloves, underwear, my high altitude down jackets, shell jackets, mitts, all that sort of clothing there. All important pee bottle, so if you need a pee at night, you don't have to get out the tent when it's freezing. Pee bottle, very important. And then scattered around me, various bits and pieces, first aid kits, toiletries, snacks, various gear. I've got a cool lantern so I can see at night. So really trying to make sure we're as comfortable as possible at base camp, which means you can rest well, acclimatize and recover before going back up the mountain. But this is our abode for a couple of weeks in base camp. Hope you find it interesting.
His tent's never normally that neat. It's definitely staged. But it was a comfortable base camp, and what's important for us in base camp is it's our opportunity to recover. So what's the plan from here? We get to base camp, we need to start acclimatizing. Well, we've been acclimatizing the whole process up there. We need to spend a few days and let our bodies just adapt to that altitude, start generating red blood cells. We're at 4,100 meters, so we're 4 kilometers below the summit of the mountain, 4 vertical kilometers. And you just have to take a moment to accept just how big that really is. And even from base camp, looking up at the summit above us, it's hard to really take it all in. But base camp needs to be comfortable. We need to be able to keep healthy. It's obviously a place where we need to make sure hygiene is good, and we need to eat well, get our energy back. The plan now is obviously to acclimatize. And to do that, we're going to go higher on the mountain, and we're going to get to Camp 1, sleep a night, go to Camp 2, sleep a night, and we'll come back. That's our first rotation. We'll do that. Our plan was to do that 4 times, but to go higher as high as Camp 3 on the mountain, even perhaps above Camp 3 and back down. And every time you do that, you trick your body into this idea that you're high on the mountain, or there's not enough oxygen, and as you come back down to base camp, it starts to generate red blood cells, and so you start to adapt. And that's part of what takes the time on these expeditions. And of course, coming back to base camp then, as I said, you've got to recover. So we left. After about 4 days in base camp, we decided to be ready. We were going to go for our first rotation. The opportunity we have on these rotations is also to start moving gear. We carry quite a lot of our own gear, so we started moving up some food, take sleeping bags, down suits, stuff that we're going to use higher on the mountain, some gas, whatever else that we can start shifting up the mountain. So from there, we moved up to Camp 1. Sorry, I'm supposed to go backwards there. That's pretty much what the route up to Camp 1 looks like. I had a photo of Camp 1. I think I deleted it. And normally this would be glacial. And this was probably our first little issue, or first red flag that came up, was the mountain wasn't in great condition. It was very dry, and we had reports from higher up on the mountain that it was extremely icy. In fact, mostly just blue ice above Camp 3. So the possibility of a Camp 4 was quite slim, because to put a Camp 4 in, it's on the side of the mountain. We have to cut, we've got to cut in a ledge and put the tent on that ledge. If there's no snow, we can't do that. So coming back to our idea without oxygen, now we have to try and summit from Camp 3, or hopefully come right and get a Camp 4 higher up above Camp 3 to summit from. To go from Camp 3 to Camp 4 was about 1,700 meters of ascent. So it's a really long push. We went up to Camp 1, slept a night, had a good night. We went up to Camp 2, dropped all our gear, spent a night there, and then came back down to base camp to rest. And when we got back to base camp, we picked up the next weather report, which was now obviously seeing a little bit further into the future, and realizing that these storms were starting to generate in the south and moving up over the mountains. But to the extent that as far as we could see forward in the long-term forecast, these storms were going to rage, and it looked like for about 2 weeks. So this is the next thing that's starting to stack up against us. We've only been to Camp 2. We're not nearly acclimatized. And Camp 2 was only at 5,100 meters, I think. Maybe 5,600 meters, we'd have to check. But not nearly high enough to even really qualify as acclimatization on an 8,000 meter peak. And certainly not if you're going to be attempting without oxygen. So we got back to base camp, and after 2 days of resting and recovering and debating this weather report, realized that actually we're in a bit of a corner. We have the weather that's coming in, and it doesn't look like there's going to be an opportunity beyond that, because there's going to be so much snowfall, the mountain's going to be out of condition. We're on the world's most dangerous mountain, and most of what kills people on Annapurna is avalanches, and fresh snow isn't going to make it any better. So it was from this moment on, probably my most intense expedition, because it's just sort of, we got into a rush, so to speak. The mountain said, it's time, you have to go now or not at all. And I think it was Mike Tyson who said, everyone's got a good plan until they get punched in the face. This was our punch. So next morning, we had our puja ceremony. I think everyone's familiar with the puja ceremony. It's actually a wonderful moment just to take a deep breath, look at the 4-kilometer high snow peak blowing spindrift above you. At 100, the jet streams are sitting on top of the mountain doing 120 k's an hour. But in the safety and comfort of base camp, just to take a moment to just absorb what we're about to do and where we're about to go. And with that, after 3 days of rest in base camp, having just done our first rotation, John and I decided or agreed we were leaving for the summit, well, a summit attempt. In order to do that, the window we had was about 18 hours. And that 18-hour window was in 3 days' time, which means we couldn't stop in all the camps on the way. So we went straight from base camp and we skipped camp 1 and went straight to camp 2. And this is what it looks like up at camp 2, and just slightly above the camp. At this point, we're now as high as we had acclimatized. We're just over 5,500 meters, and that's the summit of Annapurna in the background above us, about just under 3 kilometers vertical. We slept in camp 2 and then continued to move up the mountain pretty much the next morning. This is just above camp 2, and I'll put this photo in. It's the only ladder we needed to use on the mountain. The Sherpas rigged it for us, and it was this one only crevasse, but it ended up being the scene of quite a bit of a disaster on the way down. But we'll come back to that ladder later, just remember it. This is what it looks like above camp 2. So yesterday, we went from camp 1 to camp 2, from base camp to camp 2. We skipped camp 1. The first time we went to camp 1 on our first rotation, it took us about 5.5 hours. Then we went back to base camp. We rested a few days. The second time only took us about 2 hours and 40 minutes without much effort. So it shows you how your body adapts. It took us half the time, probably less effort, to do that next rotation. But again, we only acclimatized to camp 2, and now we're above that. We're in no man's land. At this point, we've decided there's no ways we can attempt a summit without oxygen. The temperatures were extremely low. The winds were blowing. Without oxygen, your body's not generating enough heat. And so for all those reasons that we're now stacking up, we decided we'll have to switch over. Unfortunately, we hadn't planned for it, so we only had a very limited amount and had to reserve it, but chose to switch over nonetheless. This is what the route looks like above camp 2. It gets quite steep, and this is the single most dangerous piece of mountaineering I've ever done. Of all the mountains that we've been on, between camp 2 and camp 3 of Annapurna is the craziest place I've ever been. This is just what a view of it as we're going up to camp 3.
Above this infamous couloir just next to us. See a hanging glacier. We came down from down there. Just swing around, I'll show you. There's camp 2 in the distance. You can see it there. And there comes John Black. We had a little bit of traffic, some people going down, unsuccessful summits, and then John with one Sherpa carrying rope. We're going to try to get this route fixed tonight. Because no one's been to the summit yet. Let's hope we're the first. I'll see.
So I want to go back to this picture and just show you this section here of the mountain is the couloir, the famous couloir. This whole face is avalanching all day, every day. You sleep at night and you hear the avalanches coming off, and you walk in the day and you watch them falling. But this is the only weakness that the mountain has, and that's to go up that couloir and over there to camp 3. Camp 3 is just over there where the pointer is. This couloir is basically just that funnel waiting for anything above to fall down and channel it straight at you, and you're having to climb up it. And I've often used the phrase it's Russian roulette, because it's really what it is when you're inside that couloir. And I'll show you some more of what it's capable of later. So we talked a little bit about altitude and acclimatizing, but so I'm sure many people here have already been to altitude and know what it is to experience that. But what's happening to your body is that because you don't have enough oxygen, your muscles are not functioning properly. But it has other effects. Because you don't have oxygen, you're not burning as much fuel, so you're not generating as much heat. So minus 20 on a mountain feels a lot colder than minus 20 down at sea level, just because your body's able to fight the cold better. So you feel the cold more in a very cold place. You have less muscle strength because you're not able to fuel your muscles with oxygen. And over and above that, you also lose appetite. Your gut isn't working as well. You're not consuming as much food, so you're using less, but you're consuming less. You're absorbing less, but you're also using more. So it's this downward spiral. And of course, as you go higher, that gets harder and harder and more serious. And so moving at altitude is hard, and it's actually impossible for me to explain to you just how hard it is. To put your boots on means one boot, lay down and rest, let your heart rate come back down again, the other boot. And this is what it looks like with John. And John's an incredible athlete. That's as fast as he can move.
Approaching Camp 3.
Yeah, that was it.
7,000 meters.
That's as far as he went for 10 or 15 seconds. And we sit and I try and count. Everyone's got their method, but it is extremely, extremely hard just to move, never mind on a steep face, carrying a fairly heavy pack, because we haven't been this high yet. We haven't been able to stock these camps. No one's been near the summit. There's no fixed lines on the mountain. And so we're heading into a bit of no man's land. But all of that starting to stack up against us. This is our night in Camp 3. So yesterday we went from base camp. We skipped Camp 1. We went straight to Camp 2. Oh, sorry, wrong way. We went straight to Camp 2. From a night in Camp 2, we left at about 9 in the morning. We climbed up through the couloir to Camp 3. That took us about 8 or 9 hours of pretty extreme exertion, given that we weren't acclimatized carrying heavy. And we had the weather window tomorrow morning only. So we've just done 2 very long days. We're going to rest for 3 hours in Camp 3, and our only opportunity at the summit is to now leave at 7 o'clock this evening and to go for the summit from Camp 3, 1,700 meters of ascent through the night, and to have any chance at the summit. I didn't take any photos in the dark. But this is now above Camp 3. So we left at 7 o'clock in the evening, having done those 2 very hard days before, climbed through the night. In the night, at some point, I don't know the time, I was watching John climb up behind me. I could see him down, his head torch down between my legs. And at one point, I looked down and his head torch was gone. And fortunately, Kaji was with me. We each had a Sherpa with us. We weren't climbing we were planning not to climb with oxygen, so we had Sherpa with us for that exact reason. Plans changed, but Kaji was still with me. He had a radio, fortunately, and we radioed John, and he had decided at that point the risk profile had gotten too much, and his expedition was done. And he had turned around and he had gone back to Camp 3. One of the bravest decisions I've ever seen made in the mountains, and the reason why John is one of our best mountaineers, for that exact reason, where this incredible athlete with nothing wrong, perfectly capable to take the next step, warm enough, decided that this risk profile is now beyond where it needs to be, and there'll be other opportunities. But it left me to decide whether I was going to carry on. Fortunately, we didn't make the decision together, and he'd already gone, and I think that probably had a big role to play in the fact that I decided to carry on. Kaji and I then went up ahead for the summit, and we got to the end of the fixed lines, and then alpine styled the last portion to the top of Annapurna, 8,091 meters, and that is what the summit looks like. It's about this big and about that wide, and that's all you get.
Summit. Welcome to the summit of Annapurna. Yeah. We're South African, and privileged to be up here.
This is Mountain Dew's view. Yeah. That's good.
And we got to put the flag on top too. So South African flag's now been to the top of the 2 most dangerous mountains in the world, and it's been a privilege to take it there. But the problem with the top of a mountain like this, and any for that matter, you're only halfway, and you still have to come down. Little did Kaji and I know what was actually unfolding below us, and we only got to learn that at this point all our communications were dead. The summit night was the coldest night I've ever experienced in the mountains by far, colder than any other summit night, any other day on Denali. It was just an extremely, extremely cold night, and it killed all our batteries. So we didn't have much communication until we got back down to Camp 3. It took 19 hours for us to go from Camp 3 to the summit and back down on the back of 2 days before. So we were pretty exhausted when we got to Camp 3, and I actually hoped we could just carry on going down to Camp 2 and get that gauntlet out of the way. But on reaching Camp 3, we learned that John had left Camp 3 in the morning. He had obviously in the middle of the night gone back down to Camp 3, slept a few hours, and then gone back down to base camp. And he, on the way down, this was his experience. There's that couloir. What did I do? That was me. There's the couloir that we were climbing in. John had just come down from there and turned around to see that. Shortly before this, he had met up with 2 Sherpa at that ladder. The ladder had fallen in to the crevasse. The 2 Sherpa came up from the bottom. The 3 of them fixed the ladder.
My word. Avalanche between Camp 3 and Camp 2. I was there 20 minutes ago. This is frightening. I'm safe, but some people may not have been. I hope everyone's okay. This is what Annapurna is famous for. Exactly this. I'm on the edge of it. I'm safe, but wowza.
So they had fixed the ladder, put the ladder back over the crevasse. The 3 of them sat down in the snow, shared a slab of chocolate, or a piece of chocolate. It was a slab. Knowing John, it was a whole slab. And they then parted ways. The 2 Sherpa went up, and John on his way down, and 2 minutes later, John took this video, and those 2 Sherpa were never found. And that's how close John came. More than just that avalanche, which took out all the ropes that we had previous day laid on that section of the route, there were more avalanches just below Camp 3 that took out other sections. So when Kaji and I eventually arrived back in Camp 3, we realized there was actually no way down for us. Not until the ropes were fixed up again and we managed to reset the route. Fortunately, other climbers in Camp 3, and we rallied everything we could, all the ropes that we could get, and we managed to sort that out. But in the rush of this Annapurna summit day, the small window, a number of people attempted the summit, weren't ready, and the casualties were fairly immense. Besides a few deaths that were very tragic, were a whole bunch of helicopter rescues out of Camp 3, which is something to behold. You're at 6,500 odd meters, and these helicopter pilots are able to long line somebody off the mountain. This is what it looks like to see somebody taken out of Camp 3. I'm not sure how many. We know of at least 6 cases of frostbite, including amputations that happened that day, snow blindness as well. And it was a day that Annapurna just showed what it's famous for, really. But fortunately, Kaji and I, we got down safely, 10 fingers, 10 toes. And disclaimer about the pants, I forgot to pack my thermal pants, and so Johanna left me a pair of hers. Thanks, love.
Hey everyone, just walked back into base camp after summiting Annapurna yesterday morning. Grueling 18-19 hour summit, and then another 12 hours today to get down to some of the most dangerous terrain in the 8,000ers. So really glad to be back, and most importantly glad to see John alive and well in base camp. Thank you for the welcome.
Check the weather. So the day before, we had that little window, the storms were coming in, and we walked down in that storm. Lightning, thunder, snow for hours, and nobody summits at Annapurna again, well, not yet this year. I don't think anyone will, and certainly won't attempt it till again next year. So our gamble paid off. We're home safely, and another box ticked. Of course, it raises the question, what's next? But I don't have the answer. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I hope you enjoyed the story, and look forward to bringing you some more.
Any questions for Warren? And use the microphone, please, so that the stream can also hear it.
Did you have to carry all your food up?
Yeah, we carried all our food, yeah. So we take dehydrated meals above base camp. We take dehydrated for freeze-dried meals, and you just add water. We don't eat much, and drive horse. Lots of drive horse. Staple diet up there. Oh, thank you.
So my question's about the Sherpas. I mean, there must be quite a strong bond between you guys going up and down. And those guys must be also just incredible athletes themselves. You know, having to do this, you know, more than once. Obviously, I mean, that's like their backyard. So can you maybe just give a little bit of insight there?
Oh, thank you. I'd actually love to, because they deserve it. They're more than just incredible athletes. They're actually very special people. They're very humble, but yes, they are so strong. I mean, they're not big, but all of them are obviously born in the Himalayas, born at altitude, and extremely strong in the mountains and capable. But again, I think the biggest part of them is that they're just such friendly, lovely people, and enjoyable to be around. So yes, there is a bond, and Western mountaineering, or mountaineering in the 8,000s in general, wouldn't be what it is without the support of the Sherpa. I mean, they've made especially the very popular 8,000ers what they are, and accessible. But yes, they're extremely strong, really helpful. We generally don't climb as much with Sherpa, where we can help it. We enjoy the alpine style as much as we can, but as I said, the 8,000ers don't lend themselves to that. They're too big, they're too long. Fixed lines are just part of the game, and it's a privilege to climb and get to meet and know the Sherpa. Yeah.
So when you're exhausted in that altitude, can you actually make a rational decision to carry on or not? Are you clear of mind?
Well, when I tell the story, I often wonder. Yeah, I think so. Yes. You know, there's always a sense in us as trying to survive, I suppose, and that's an overwhelming primal instinct, I'd imagine. But so I feel like we are, but you're definitely slower, and the slower you are in the mountains, the more dangerous they become, because you're exposed for longer, be it just temperature or wind or dehydration, be it in avalanche zones, crevasse fields. Exposures are dangerous. So being able to, you know, be strong, move fast, and make the right decisions is definitely a part of it that keeps you safe. And probably one of the things that helps John and I, because there's two of us and we've climbed for so long together, we also bounce a lot off each other, and I think we share quite a good bond in that sense, that we understand each other. I can see when he's having a tough time. He can see when I'm having a tough time, which is more than him. But yeah, it's definitely something to be something to consider, or something to be conscious of, that you are slowing down.
Did you carry your oxygen with you all the time, or?
Yes. Yeah. So from Camp 3 to the summit, we carry our own oxygen. I may have even carried it up to Camp 3, funny enough. Well, I think Kaji might have taken it. I took only one cylinder. We hadn't planned to take oxygen, so we had to scavenge. But we took one cylinder each. I don't know how much they weigh. They're not too heavy. About 5 kgs, I think. 5 kgs.
That's
Yeah.
so heavy.
And yeah, I suppose everything at that altitude counts. Yeah.
Number one, how long does the cylinder last? What sort of flow rate are you running at?
So the flow rate dictates how long they last. I don't know what you can actually change the settings, and it works in liters per minute, from half a liter up to, I think, 4. I think up to 4. Yeah. So you can, if you want to skip in step, you can crank it up to 4. No, it won't be that great, but I climbed on half on the lowest setting because I only had one cylinder and I had to make it work. But if you've got enough oxygen, you can turn it up to 2 or 3. But even at a higher flow rate, you're only supplementing. It's not a full dose of breathing, so to speak. You don't feel like but definitely keeps you a bit warmer. It's probably one of the biggest things, and you are moving a little bit faster, which again is keeping you safer.
So you spread it over how long? I mean, when did you start using your oxygen, and when did you stop using it on the ground?
I took my cylinder off about halfway down, I guess. It wasn't finished, just before Camp 3, about an hour and a half, 2 hours before Camp 3. So I'm not sure exactly where I stopped using it. I just got full of having the kit on. But so it lasted about 16 hours. Yeah.
Then the other thing I'd be interested to hear is, I've been reading reports about climbers using xenon gas to forego the need for rotations. Your comments on that?
It's the evolution of mountaineering. For me, I've always enjoyed alpine style climbing, the purer side of mountaineering, but I don't necessarily criticize the use of fixed lines and oxygen. In fact, I've done it myself, because that's what we've done in the 8,000ers. And I suppose the xenon gas is just possibly the next step, and it's going to open up, and I think it is going to open up mountaineering to people who can't afford the 2 or 3 months that it takes to do the acclimatization process. So the way it worked is they were dosing xenon gas at home. I think they were in London. And then they, when the conditions were right, jumped in a jet, flew to Kathmandu, jumped in a helicopter, went to base camp, missed out on all that beautiful culture and food and hiking and mountains and rivers and valleys. They didn't see any of that unless they've been there before. Base camp, and then climbed for the summit on oxygen. So it's going to open it up to probably a very small group of people who can afford such a thing, because obviously it comes with a price tag. But it's part of the evolution of it, and it'll be interesting to see it evolve.
So presumably, instead of doing xenon, you could just go EPO, because they don't drug test you when you come down, do they?
No, they don't. No, but I suppose it would have a similar effect. Yeah, it's the same thing. You're just loading blood. Yeah. So you'll be glad to know, Mom, that your daughter's going to be in the valley on the hiking trail, the Annapurna circuit. They go quite high. I think they cross 1 or 2 paths. I haven't done passes. I haven't done it, but I think they go as high as 5,500 meters. So they get pretty high up in the mountains. But she's going to have stories to tell you. It's a beautiful, beautiful place to be. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for the awesome talk. Can you explain a bit more about the climbing aspect, and how much rope did you have to take up, and did you have to protect your climbing a lot of the time? And then also, when you came back down in that section where in the Kua the avalanche took out the fixed ropes, what happened there when you came down?
So the climbing's actually not technical at all, because you're on fixed lines. So you actually Jumar the ropes, and the lines are fixed from Camp 2, basically, just below Camp 2, normally would be all the way to the summit. And all the teams sort of get together and share that load. In this case, we didn't have ropes all the way to the summit. So when Kazi and I got there, the last bit we just alpine styled. We unclipped. We didn't even rope up to each other. We didn't have any pro or any ice screws. I carry one ice screw on me, but it's pretty useless without a section of rope or anything to do with it. So, but I do carry an ice axe. Learned that lesson the hard way on K2 when we had an anchor pop, and I had my ice axe on my backpack and couldn't access it when I needed it. But so I always carry it with me, tethered on my harness. So fortunately we had that, and we were able to do the last bit. But generally on the 8,000 you're going to climb a fixed line from bottom to top. And I would love to alpine style an 8,000er. You're going to have to go do some crazy route that no one else is on. And there's a reason they're not on it. And the 8,000s, that's just how they climbed. And also with the rotations up and down to try and alpine style, that is, and there are guys who do it. There are guys who walk next to the fixed line or try to climb next to it. In fact, there was a guy attempting Annapurna. He fell in a crevasse and was chop it out, and he lost 4 fingers, and he didn't summit. So, but that isn't necessarily the case because he was alpine styling. But yeah, had he been on the fixed line, it wouldn't have happened. So. I don't know if that answers your question. There's not actually a lot of technical climbing that we would normally get in, say, when we, in the Andes, where you're all alone on this mountain, and the route is, you choose the route, and you do your own pro, and you belaying each other and abbing off. And on the way down, when the avalanche took it out, we had some excess rope in Camp 3. We took some sections from above, and then we just re-rigged. We didn't have to do much, but 80 meters or 100 meters in sections. I just had to re-rig those ropes.
What is logistics like? Is there an outfitter that organizes your permit, your Sherpas, your stay in base camp, organizes cylinders for oxygen, ropes, or whatever you need, or you just rock up and go for it?
It's exactly that. So there's various different companies that offer that service, and you can take that service as far as you want. You can have fresh fish in camp if you want. That's what happens on the more popular mountains. But they'll organize your permits for you. You basically climb under their permit, and then they'll do all the logistics in country. So it's a very mountain orientated place, obviously out of Kathmandu. And so getting yourself set up to base camp is very easy. How you do it above base camp varies quite substantially from one climber to the next. How much you take, how much oxygen you want higher up the mountain, what type of tents, and how many Sherpa you want, how much help you want. That you basically just all comes with the price tag as you want to tailor it for yourself. But generally up to base camp, it's pretty much a standard, and they make base camp nice and comfortable. We don't carry those duffel bags to base camp. Out of the elevator was as far as I took it. Yeah.
I was wondering about the training. How much training did you have to do, and how many weeks before did you actually start your training?
I generally keep fit all the time, so it's more of just like a ramp up of the normal day-to-day fitness. So generally I run, cycle, swim mostly, quite a bit of rock climbing, mostly because I enjoy it. But the run, cycle, swim pretty much covers for all of it. And then the preparation time is probably 4 months, that ramp up process. Once we've decided we're going, they'll pretty much start. Running I do the most of because it's easiest. We've got busy lives, so you just slap your shoes on out the front door and you're back an hour later, and it was successful. In a week? Not a lot. I've maybe 30 Ks a week, 50 Ks a week, at the very, very most. Yeah. So by my comrades' friends' standards, I'm actually quite useless. Cool. Well, thank you. Oh, sorry, one more.
Let's take one more.
Hi. I missed the K2 talk, unfortunately, a couple of years ago or last year, whenever it was. So my understanding, this was more dangerous than K2, because I read the article in the journal, and that sounded freaking hairy.
Yes, I actually don't know how to answer that, because K2 as a package was definitely more dangerous. We were exposed for longer, a lot more rock falls, more avalanches over a longer period. I remember getting to the bottom of K2 at Advanced Base Camp at the top of the glacier, and I turned to John and I said, it's much steeper than I expected, because it was just it was ridiculous, actually. And which sounds a bit silly, because you would have thought we would know that by the time we get to the bottom. And the whole way up was just avalanches and rockfall, particularly up to Camp 3. Above Camp 3, it settled down a little bit, and then obviously the bottleneck, the famous bottleneck and traverse. But actually the bottleneck and traverse to me wasn't the most dangerous part. The lower sections were trying to kill you the whole time. But Camp 2 to Camp 3 on Annapurna was, I'm not going back. It's ridiculously dangerous. There are just so many avalanches. all day, all night, and that couloir is just one funnel waiting for it to come down. And then it's coming down while we're approaching it. It's coming down while we're above it. You know, on the way down, I remember stopping there and just about an abseil into it, and I looked up and I was like, "Are you done?" And I quickly went down as fast as we could. But fast isn't fast. It's not fast enough. So, yeah, it's a dangerous spot. That. So I don't really know how to answer you. I'd say K2 as a whole is probably you're exposed more. But that section, Camp 2 to Camp 3, the most dangerous piece of mountaineering I've ever done, yeah.
So how long does it take you to go through the dangerous valley?
Not long, probably just that whole section, 9 hours or so. But that little couloir, I think on the way down, you could probably get through it in about 45 minutes. Yeah. On the way up, about an hour and a half. Yeah. Cool. Well, everyone, thank you. I'm going to be around a bit. If you want to ask any more questions, I'm here. But thanks so much for having me. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks, Warren. It was a really inspiring and also frightening story. I really enjoyed that, and I think, you and John will be role models for mountaineers for years to come. Thanks a lot for coming to Joburg and giving this talk. I have a little gift for you. There's 2 buffs for you and for your partner. Those are hot off the press. I think you're the first ones to get them. So for the rest of you, watch out for the newsletter. And also something to enjoy by the fire. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Warren. There's still 2 pizza slices, so you can run for it. But there is some more drinks, but only if you're not the designated driver.